Hello again, welcome back to The Thinking Believer. I said last week that this week was going to be longer, that's why last week's was so short, but this video actually went the way of the Hobbit movies and got so long that we decided to cut it in two. The second video will be coming along at some point. Hopefully it works out better for these videos than it did for the Hobbit movies. I should really think of a more optimistic analogy. Anyhow, we're taking a week off from history and diving into philosophy and literature this week. I've been thinking a lot about how we could possibly comprehend a transcendent God, and doing it through actually one of my favorite analogies that I've heard for God. So here we go. On April 12, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth. A few days later, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev said Gagarin flew into space but did not see any God there. The idea being that if God existed, then when you get to the heavens, you're going to find him. Culturally, we often think of God or depict him in that same kind of way, as an old man who's off sitting on a cloud somewhere that theoretically you could get to or see. If you Google what does God, it autofills looks like, but God doesn't look like anything. He is formless. He doesn't have a body. He's immaterial. He's timeless and uncreated. He isn't Zeus. You could never go somewhere and find God there. I think we know this on some fundamental level, but we don't spend much time reflecting on it. At least I don't, because it's weird and hard to comprehend. But the more I thought about it this week, just the more my mind was blown by it and by its implications for us. C.S. Lewis, I think, put it brilliantly when he said that Khrushchev expecting Gagarin to find God in space was like Hamlet expecting to find Shakespeare in the attic of his castle. Shakespeare created Hamlet's world. He doesn't exist within it. The first time I heard this, I was like, oh, neat. But in spending some time thinking about it since then, it started to bend my brain. It is way harder to comprehend a God that is timeless and formless than a God like Zeus, who's essentially just a stronger human, immortal, lives on top of a mountain and comes down for dalliances with women occasionally. Just imagine Shakespeare trying to explain his existence to Hamlet. Like, yo, Hammy, your existence is really only a shadow of my existence. I made you up. Your whole world's on a page and you are just a character down there. Oh, and when I say down there isn't really a down at all. It's just kind of an elsewhere from me. Except Shakespeare would use more of these and thous and sexual innuendos because Shakespeare. Even if Hamlet believed Shakespeare as he tries to explain to him, like, hey, you're a character in a play, like, if Hamlet tried to explain that to somebody else, everyone would think he would be crazy. Oh, wait. On the other end of the spectrum from Zeus and the anthropomorphic gods of mythology is the idea of the supernatural being who's not really a being at all. It's just some sort of cosmic force.
It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
People talk about the universe or good energy or something that can be sensed but never really known. But what I personally find really dissatisfying about the idea of this spiritual but not religious is the unknowableness of that higher power. There are lots of people who will say that a something else exists, or will say things like, oh, the universe wants this to happen, or it will all work out for good. But why should I believe those things? Why should we think that this unknowable force out there has any interest in us at all? Or that if it is interested, that it wants good for us and not evil? And how can you depend on a thing that you can't really know? The God of Christianity doesn't fall into that category either. The Bible is the story of him trying to be known by us. The Old Testament does it in pieces as God works through the limitations of the people he's dealing with. Think again of Shakespeare trying to explain himself to Hamlet in terms he'd understand. But ultimately, how could Shakespeare make himself known to Hamlet? He could write himself into the story. And that's exactly what the God of the Bible did for us. The transcendent God who has a formless existence wrote himself into our world as Jesus. Jesus is God's final form. Christianity is founded on the idea that God has come down and entered into time and space in first century Judea. When we look to Jesus, we see God himself. John 14:7 says, if you really had known me, you would know who my Father is. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. So when Jesus says to love our enemies, God is saying we should love our enemies. When Jesus washes the feet of his disciples and shows us a humble, service-oriented approach to love, that is God himself showing how highly he views service. And when Jesus not only says turn the other cheek, but models it on the cross, we see the God of the universe, the creator of everything, show us that true power isn't a closed fist, but an open hand. I love the balance that we have between the transcendent God the Father, who is timeless and formless and the creator of everything, and the incarnate Jesus, who is God come as man so that he could be known by us. Sometimes I get lost in the abstract details of God, or I wrestle with the way God seems in parts of the Old Testament. But when that happens, I try to remember that if I want to know who the God of Christianity is, I don't need to look any further than Jesus Christ. We don't have to go to the heavens to find God. He already came down here to us. That fact doesn't make all the questions go away for me, but it does anchor my soul. But what do you think? Is this a helpful way to think about God? Is there anything I could have explained more clearly? I'm still wrapping my head around this too, and I'm going to keep thinking about it. This is obviously a bit different than the last couple weeks topic-wise. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that as well. As always, like and subscribe if you're interested in more content like this, and besides that, have a great day.